Hi, I'm Dr. Douglas Street. I'm a medical doctor, and this video is to help you to understand the concept of the glycemic index. It's a part of a series of videos that I've put together to help diabetics to achieve remission. This video helps you to understand the glycemic index, why it is important. It gives you examples of the different glycemic indices of different foods, and it points you to other resources that will help to show you the other examples of foods and their glycemic indices. So make sure you stay tuned until the end. Well, the glycemic index is important because it helps you to make better food choices, and better food choices leads to better outcomes. And especially for somebody who's trying to get their blood sugar under control and even go for remission, this information is really critical. So make sure that you continue watching. So what is the glycemic index? The glycemic index is a measure of how much a specified amount of a particular food will increase your blood sugar. And this can be low, medium, or high. Now, the glycemic index goes from 0 to 100, and 100 is the glycemic index of glucose. So other foods are compared to glucose, but you do find that there may be food that may be even more than 100, but we are not going to go into that discussion during this video. The glycemic index also gives you a measure of how much carbohydrates will increase not just your blood sugar but also the inflammation. Foods that have a higher glycemic index will not just increase your blood sugar more, but they'll also increase your inflammation more. But I do recommend that you don't use a glycemic index to assess how healthy other types of food are, for example proteins, because you do find that there are some proteins, even though they're unhealthy, they may have a low glycemic index and you may have a false impression as to whether this food is healthy or not. So use the glycemic index only to assess your carbohydrates. Now, what are some of the benefits of making these better choices based on the food's glycemic index? Well, for one, it will reduce your blood sugar spikes. And as we mentioned in the previous video, blood sugar spikes can cause your diabetes to get worse. And also, it can increase inflammation inside of your body. So by making those choices, your inflammation level is going to be lower. Now, when you have a food with a high glycemic index, it tends to be absorbed into your body more quickly. Now, when that happens, you're going to get hungry earlier, and then your energy level is going to crash. When you have food with a lower glycemic index, there is a more steady supply of glucose into your bloodstream. This will cause you to feel full longer, and therefore you'll have a less likelihood of eating again. When you eat less frequently, your weight is going to be better controlled, and in fact you may even lose weight. So having foods with a lower glycemic index can help you in many different ways. So let us look at some examples. First, let's look at low glycemic index foods. Now, these are those with glycemic index between 0 and 55, and they include non-starchy vegetables, and these include lettuce, tomato, carrots, broccoli. Those foods have a low glycemic index, but keep in mind that glycemic index is not the best way to assess this category of foods. This also includes legumes such as peas and beans. These have a low glycemic index, but again, this is a protein source, and that's not the best way to assess whether protein is healthy or not. Steel cut oats is a carbohydrate, and it also falls in the category of low glycemic index foods. Whole grains have a low glycemic index. These include quinoa and barley, and especially certain types of these foods. Most foods tend to have a low glycemic index as well, but of course it's best to go for those that are less sweet. You also have foods like green banana, spelt bread. These have glycemic indices that go up to 55. You also have other foods like sweet potato and prunes, and even though these foods are sweet, you find that the glycemic index still falls in the low range. So don't mistake how sweet a particular food is to indicate its glycemic index. There are some foods that are sweet that have a low glycemic index, and there are some foods that are not sweet that have a high glycemic index. Now, the reason why I don't use glycemic index to assess, or you shouldn't use glycemic index to assess proteins, is, for example, animal-based proteins have a low glycemic index, but they may trigger your inflammation. So it is not useful to use the glycemic index to apply to primarily protein sources. Now we look at the medium glycemic index foods, and these are foods with a glycemic index between range of 56 to 69, and they include whole wheat products such as whole wheat bread, brown rice, sweet potato, corn, and honey also falls into this category. Now it's important to understand that not all of these foods are recommended. For example, whole wheat products. I generally discourage the consumption of whole wheat products because the glycemic index is very close to the upper limit, which is 68, 69 thereabouts. And it also has a high level of gluten, which can increase your inflammation. So generally speaking, I don't recommend whole wheat products. It's also important to understand that the cooking method of the food is important. It can affect the glycemic index and also the texture of the food. So, for example, refined corn will have a higher glycemic index than coarse texture corn. So these are points to keep in mind. Now we come to the high glycemic index foods, and this I would say is the worst category. These are foods with high glycemic index of 70 or more. Now these include foods like white bread, white rice, Irish potato. Usually the glycemic index of these foods are about 72. Even pumpkin has a high glycemic index of 76. Cassava even higher in the 90s. So these are foods that we usually recommend to diabetics to avoid because they not only increase your blood sugar, they also increase your inflammation. Cereals with sugar added, sugary snacks, fruit juices, drinks, these foods are not really recommended for diabetics because they can cause your sugar to go up quite a bit because they absorb quickly into your body and can also trigger high levels of inflammation in your body. So they are best avoided or extremely limited. Now, if you want more information about the glycemic index, you could check these resources. There is the American Diabetes Association, and that gives you a lot of information about management of diabetes, including the glycemic index. So make sure that you check that website out. There's also the Glycemic Index Foundation, and that also gives you a lot of information about glycemic index and the different glycemic indices of different foods. And you have nutritional apps like MyFitnessPal and Chronometer. These also can tell you, what the glycemic index of different foods are, and can also track the amount of calories that you're getting into your body, and that can go a far way in helping you to keep your blood sugar under control. Now, as we wind down to the end of our video, we want to look at Psalms 34 verse 8, which says, "Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who trusts in him." Now, to taste and see the Lord is good, it means to have an experience with God. God promises that if you seek him out, then you will be blessed. You will enjoy the experience. You will see that he looks out for you and he is good for you. The word of God also gives us guidance as to the food that we should and should not eat. So when we seek God out and we have an experience with him, we will see that he is looking out for good and he will be a blessing to us. Thank you. Until next time.